So now I want you to look at exercise 3 after you listen. So go ahead and take some time to complete the story. And after you complete the story, I will play an audio of someone reading the story.
Page 59, Exercise 3A.
Last summer, Almaz volunteered at the public library downtown. She liked working with the older people because she felt that she was doing something worthwhile. Today, she is meeting with Steve, the volunteer coordinator at Quiet Palms, a nursing home. She wants to volunteer there to find out if she likes working in the healthcare field. Steve tells her about some of her responsibilities at Quiet Palms. He says it's very important for volunteers to be compassionate and patient when they are working with the residents. He asks Almaz to make a commitment to volunteer at least 3 hours per week. Almaz agrees to attend an orientation. She says she can't wait to start volunteering.
Okay, so now I'm going to play an audio clip of a very similar story. This is actually from your workbook, but I don't want you to open your workbook. Just listen to the audio so you can practice your listening skills. And then I'm going to ask you some questions. So just listen, keep your books closed. You can have your notebook out. Okay.
Unit 5, Around Town, page 54. Exercise 1.
My Volunteer Experience by Danny Parks. Last summer, I was a volunteer at Stone Valley Children's Hospital. I'm thinking about a career in the childcare field, and I wanted to find out if I liked working with children of different ages. First, I talked to the volunteer coordinator at the hospital to get more information. Before I started, I had to attend 3 orientation sessions. I also had to pass some health tests. I made a commitment to volunteer 2 mornings a week. Every day at the hospital was different. One of my favorite jobs was to take the toy cart to the children's rooms. They could choose toys to play with and take home, and that made their time in the hospital a lot happier. Another job I enjoyed was delivering mail and reading cards and letters to the youngest children if their parents weren't there. I also helped little children eat their lunch during mealtime. Sometimes the volunteers did art projects like drawing and painting with the children. They really loved that. Some people think that it's difficult to work with children who are so sick, but that isn't true. The children made me smile and laugh every time I was there. To work with sick children, you have to be patient and compassionate. You don't really need any special training, just some free time and a desire to help. I can't wait to volunteer again this summer at the hospital. I think volunteering is a worthwhile experience for everyone.
Okay, so the first question is, where did Danny volunteer last summer? Where did Danny volunteer last summer? Okay, so you might have written Danny volunteered at Stone Valley Children's Hospital last summer. Danny volunteered at Stone Valley Children's Hospital last summer. Okay, and then the second question is, what does she want to do, or in what field does she want to work in the future? In what field does she want to work in the future? Okay, so you could say she wants to work in the childcare field. or you could say she is thinking about a career in the childcare field. Okay, so the next question is, what are 3 things Danny had to do before she became a volunteer? What are 3 things Danny had to do before she became a volunteer? Okay, so you could say she had to attend 3 orientation sessions. Okay, another thing she had to do, you could say she had to pass some health tests. She had to pass some health tests. And finally, she made a commitment to volunteer 2 mornings a week. Okay, so number 3, what are 4 responsibilities Danny had at the hospital? What are 4 responsibilities Danny had at the hospital? Okay, so you could say she took the toy cart to the children's rooms. Let's see, the next responsibility, you could say she delivered mail and read cards and letters to the youngest children if their parents weren't there. And then she helped little children eat their lunch during mealtime. She helped little children eat lunch during mealtime. And finally, you can say, sometimes she did art projects like drawing and painting. Sometimes she did art projects. And you can make the sentence short like that. Sometimes she did art projects, or you can include the other information in the sentence. You could say, sometimes she did art projects like drawing and painting with the children. Okay, do you need special training to work with sick children? According to this article, do you need any special training to work with sick children? Okay, and the answer is no. Danny said no. Then what do you need to work with sick children? What do you need? So you could say, you just need some free time and a desire to help. You just need some free time and a desire to help. So what are 2 qualities that describe people who work with sick children? What are 2 qualities that Danny said describe people who work with sick children, volunteers who work with sick children? So you could say, you have to be patient and compassionate. You have to be patient and compassionate. You all know what patient means. What about compassionate? What does compassionate mean? So compassionate means that you care about the feelings of other people. So you can relate with them. You feel when they are hurting, you hurt with them. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at page 55 in your workbook. So now you can open your workbook. Let's look at page 55. If you want to go back and read the listening activity we just did, it's on page 54. So you can read that on your own. But we're going to do page 55 together. So let's look at exercise 2. It says, circle the correct words. So I'm going to give you some time to do this. Let's look at the first example. If you can't wait to go home, you want to go home. So, there's actually a double print there. So, yeah, you want, not you want, but you want to go home. So if you can't wait means you're very excited. You're really looking forward to it. You really want to do it. So if you can't wait to go home, that means you want to go home. Okay, so I'll give you some time to finish numbers 2 through 6. Okay? Number 2, Larissa is very patient with her children. She is always calm. Number 3, the residents of a building are the people who live there. So you can see residents, the base word is reside. Reside means live. Number 4, we had an orientation meeting before we started volunteering. Of course, an orientation meeting is always before something, before. And also, if you look at that word orientation, the base word is orient. Orient means like to point in a certain direction. So before you start something, you need to be pointed in the right direction. So that's why it's called an orientation meeting. Okay, so number 5, I think playing sports is worthwhile for children. It's a useful way for children to spend their time. Okay? And then number 6, I made a commitment to the hospital. I will volunteer 1 day a week. All right, so that was pretty easy. Let's go ahead and look at exercise 3. Okay, so let's look at number 1. Liz is a patient volunteer. She almost never gets upset. Okay, and then number 2, Patrick cares about how the patients feel. So as we talked about before, when you care about someone's feelings, we say that you are compassionate. So the answer is he's a compassionate man. Number 3, volunteering at the hospital is worthwhile. It helps people a lot. Number 4, Luis loves books. He wants to volunteer at the library on weekends. Number 5, most of the residents in the nursing home are over 70 years old. Okay, number 6, I can't wait to start volunteering at the animal shelter. I'm excited about it. Number 7, I made a commitment to work 1 day every week. I volunteer every Saturday. Number 8, even if you work as a volunteer, a job may have many important responsibilities. You need to take it seriously. Number 9, there is an orientation meeting for the new volunteers tomorrow. And number 10, the volunteer coordinator will explain our duties and answer questions. Again, the volunteer coordinator will explain our duties and answer questions. Okay, so for exercise 4, this is a listening activity. So I will play the audio and ask some questions. So here's the audio.
Page 55. Exercise 4.
Good morning, Ms. Baez. I understand that you're the volunteer coordinator for the Science Museum.
Yes, I am.
My name is Moy Wang. I'm interested in volunteering at the museum, and I'd like to ask a few questions.
Of course. What would you like to know?
First, what kind of opportunities are there for volunteers?
We use volunteers for many different things at the museum. For example, some are meet and greet volunteers. They greet people who come to the museum and answer general questions. Others are museum guides. This requires a special knowledge of our exhibits and different areas of science. What are you interested in?
I'm interested in becoming a guide. I'm studying now for a degree in education. I want to teach high school biology. I think this would be a worthwhile experience for me as a future teacher.
Well, you'll have to fill out an application, of course. Then, as soon as your application is accepted, you'll take the guide's orientation and training course. We also require a commitment of at least 1/2 day each week. Do you think you can manage that?
That would be perfect. I can't wait to get started.
Wonderful. Of course, I can't say anything definite until you complete the training, but I hope to welcome you soon as one of our volunteers.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so in this listening, who are the speakers? The speakers are Miss Baez and Moy. I think it's Miss Baez. Baez or Diaz sounds like it's the correct name, but it sounds like he's saying Baez. Who is Miss Baez? You can say she is a volunteer coordinator for the Science Museum. Okay, what does Moy want to do? What does Moy want to do? You can say Moy wants to, or he wants to volunteer at the Science Museum. He wants to volunteer at the Science Museum. What are the two types of volunteer positions at the Science Museum? So one position is meet and greet. So what does a meet and greet volunteer do? A meet and greet volunteer greets visitors and answers general questions. The second type of volunteer is a museum guide. So what does a museum guide do? So we could say a museum guide needs to have special knowledge of exhibits and different areas of science. So a museum guide needs special knowledge of exhibits and different areas of science. So which one does Moy want to do? Which position does Moy want to volunteer for? He wants to volunteer for the museum guide, or as a museum guide. He wants to volunteer as a museum guide. So now we can look at the question, and it says, what does Moy have to do to volunteer at the museum? So we have to check two answers. So in this case, hopefully you already checked the answers, but in this case the two answers are take an orientation course and promise to work 1 half day a week. So if you make a sentence, you could say, Moy has to take an orientation course and promise to work 1 half day a week to volunteer at the museum. Okay, again, Moy has to take an orientation course and promise to work 1 half day a week to volunteer at the museum. And of course, he needs to fill out an application as well. Let me ask one more question. What is Moy studying now? What is he studying? Excuse me. He is studying education. He's studying education. And what does Moy want to do in the future? What does he want to do? You can say he wants to teach high school biology. He wants to teach high school biology. So he thinks volunteering at the Science Museum would be worthwhile for him. All right. So that's the end of Unit 5, Lesson A. So we're going to continue to Lesson B.